everybody, and welcome back. Don't know why I gave that so much energy for a P1 podcast with Matt and Tommy, because this is the Brazilian Grand Prix, and I know I have to do some talking about things I don't want to talk about, but that's fine. We're all good. You're good, Tommy. You're great. I mean, your GOAT and your favourite driver, both on the podium. So, you know, at least one side Lovely of the P1 camp is going to be happy.
Yeah, it's normally me, isn't it?
It's always you. Austria 22. That was the last time it was me.
Boy, that was a long time ago.
Yes, it was. Thank you. It feels a long way ago. But before we can dive into all of the Brazilian Grand Prix shenanigans, we need to mention that the P1 Live show is happening. 3rd of December, Manchester. 5th of December, Glasgow. 10th of December, London. Glasgow is sold out. But London and Manchester are still available if you want to grab a ticket before they probably sell out as well. That'd be amazing. Can't even believe that that's even a thing that's happening. But anyway, if you want to go find out more about that, there's links in our YouTube and also on our social media as well. And we'd love for you to come along. Right, Tom Bellingham, Brazil. Shall we start with your most memorable moment?
You'll be shocked to hear that my most memorable moment is about Fernando Alonso. And of course, you wouldn't have guessed, would you? But of course, it has to be those last laps with Fernando. Just superb driving. It was, if you watched our Twitch stream, you'll know I mentioned it as well, that one of my favourite moments of the year, to be honest, because it was such a surprise, I think. I think that's what made it so exciting, was it felt like Alonso was such an underdog in that situation. You know, Perez is driving the Red Bull, which is, you know, dominating the season. Alonso, the Aston Martin, had fallen off massively, looking a lot better this weekend, and he was hanging on, and it looked like he was going to just about hold on. And then as soon as Perez got by, I was like, that's it. There's absolutely no way. Like, it's over, gutting. Last lap, he's not going to do it. And then for him to actually fight back, repass him and do it is sensational. Like, what a man. What a man.
Surprised you've got a hoodie on, mate. You seem really hot under the collar over the faces.
I just love him. Honestly. Just so good. I absolutely
loved it. We need to get you and him just in a room, have a little meal together, you know, just really let the love really come in. But yes, Fernando Alonso, my goodness me. I'm glad this happened at the end because it made me forget. And it was such a brilliant battle. There's a question actually from Oblivious92. How was Alonso able to hold Perez for such a long time?
Because the GOAT.
Well, Fernando Alonso, that's not the answer, Tommy. It's obviously helpful, in your opinion, that he's the GOAT. But how did he keep Perez at bay? I mean, it's a mystery in some ways, because I'm sure up and down the paddock they are like, how did Perez not get on the podium in a Red Bull? But we have been asking ourselves that for quite some time this year. But Perez had been looking better this weekend. I wouldn't say miraculously better, because he still finished 34 seconds off Verstappen, who was ultimately cruising at the end. But back to Alonso, it was experience. It was years and years of experience, and he knows how to defend like no other. He's one of a very few amount of drivers that I think could have pulled off that masterclass that Fernando Alonso did for this Brazilian Grand Prix. He took such unorthodox lines. I found it absolutely bewildering, the kind of lines he was taking, especially around Juncao, I think it's called, which I mentioned in Funniest Tweets, where he wasn't going anywhere near the apex. He was going right round the outside, squaring off the car, sort of Ving the corner, I think as Martin Brundle called it, and just always focusing on getting an amazing run out the corner. And he did that time after time after time after time until a couple of laps from the end where he was still doing it, but Perez just got close enough to give it a good old go and managed to get through. Alonso, somehow, through the warrior, the lion within him, managed to stay within DRS, had no chance into turn one on the final lap, but it was all about nailing that center S if you wanted to have a chance at the car ahead this weekend. And he did. Perez, I would say, didn't. Perez had to do literally what Alonso's been doing for 15 laps for one corner. And he didn't manage to do it in the same way that Alonso managed to do it. And he steamed back through. Tommy screaming. I've never seen so much energy come out of the Bellingham side of the house before. But my God, it was great to watch on all counts.
It was so good. Like you say, it was that final corner was the key. The fact that he managed, because I was actually watching the race back just then, because my wife was watching it on a delay actually. And I went back up, saw that it almost felt like it was just happening at the end, but it was like 40 laps into the race and Perez was about a second behind Alonso. So he was holding him off for like the whole race. It wasn't just like the last 4 or 5 laps. Yeah. And yeah, it was superb. The fact that he, like you say, squared off the corner and that just gave him just enough that Perez couldn't get he got the DRS, but he couldn't close quick enough. And one thing I will credit Perez with before I uncredit him for something else later is the move on Alonso was very good. Dive down the inside. It was very brave. And then he was able to do just enough that Alonso couldn't get back past him. He covered the inside line, which is something Hamilton didn't do actually at the start of the race, that we were kind of saying like, why is Hamilton not covered, the inside for Alonso there? Perez did do that really well. But then Fernando was just clever enough to stick with him through that whole infield section. And the clever thing that Alonso did was he knew that he was never going to beat the Red Bull into turn 1. And he had to almost scare Perez into thinking that he might do a dive bomb down the inside of turn 1. And that's exactly what Perez thought he did. So Perez actually ended up defending fresh air a little bit. And Alonso could just take his normal line through those first few corners. And it meant he got an amazing run through those corners. And
it was just a tiny little jink from Fernando. It wasn't anything like I'm coming.
It was just
like a little, I might be going now. And then Perez, I don't think Perez, again, he didn't necessarily defend a huge amount, but there was just that part in the back of his mind which
he had to compromise his corner.
Just a tiny bit of compromise. That's all he needed, right? It wasn't like he went really deep and it was an easy move for Fernando. It was just not as good as a Senna S if Perez was on his own, and that was the key difference, wasn't it?
It was. And going back to while we're still just mentioning some Alonso brilliance before we get onto the pain train for you,
all aboard
or choo choo. But not in the choo-choo you were hoping for.
No, not the Ferrari hype train, that's for sure.
We were actually just discussing when we were watching the highlights back, kind of forgot how crucial for Alonso's race that move on Hamilton was as well. The bravery to go up the inside and just know that he had to make that move, because that's another reason why he stood on that podium when he may well shouldn't have been. The Aston was, of course, a lot better, and it pains me a little bit because they've almost unupgraded the car to get back to it, and I didn't even think about this. So just to have a little bit of pain for me, but God, why now? Because Singapore was meant to be that race where the Aston was going to be really good. And I'm like, if they had this car for Singapore, they could have been in the mix, but they fell off at the most annoying time, because I really, really want to see that Fernando win. But it's good to see him back up there.
You know what that is? Yeah. We don't live in a fairy tale, all right? You got your Max Verstappen 17 wins. You got your Fernando Alonso several podiums. What more do you want? A win. All right, fair enough.
Alonso win.
Yeah, fair enough. But yeah, it was incredibly crucial for Alonso's race, but it was my immediate reaction on the Twitch watch along, which was, why isn't Hamilton defending that? Did Hamilton know deep down that his race wasn't with the Fernando Alonso and the Aston Martin? Potentially. But it was still just like he left the car's width and Fernando took it. And I don't know, maybe Lewis went into it a little bit dejected, knowing full well what that Mercedes pace had after the sprint. But I mean, there was a strange team radio as well, wasn't there, with him, where he was basically laughing back at them, saying like, I am pushing and I have been for the last 5 laps sort of thing. So Yeah, always not great in the Mercedes camp, but we will get on to that. Before we do, it's time for my most memorable moment. Memorable? And was it a moment? Charles Leclerc. This moment, this thing that happened was one of the worst experiences I've actually had as a Charles Leclerc fan. And you might be thinking, how, Matt? He's not challenging for anything. He's not in the championship hunt. Was he really going to win the race? No. But there was hope. There was delirium. Delirium always goes up, especially when Charles Leclerc's on the front row. And I saw those brand new, just squeaky clean, polished, soft tyres, ready to throw one up the inside of Max Verstappen into turn one. And then anything is possible. Anything, maybe not. Max Verstappen was still going to win, but there was just hope. And then just to, you're on it was unsuspecting as well. I think that was the main problem for me. I was just sat there, formation lap, getting ready for a Brazilian Grand Prix. Hard cut straight to Charles Leclerc in the wall.
Yeah.
How does anyone emotionally and mentally prepare themselves for their favourite driver to be in the wall halfway around the formation lap in dry conditions?
Yes. I mean, I know other drivers have had bad luck. And, even Sainz, I can't remember what race it was that Sainz couldn't even start. Was it Qatar, maybe?
I think it was, yeah.
Yeah, Ferrari have had both of them have had like bad luck and stuff. But it did feel like that kind of thing, like this could only happen to Charles Leclerc. He's not even got to turn one and had a problem. Like, how is the car failing when they're just pootling around to get on the grid? It's quite unbelievable, really. And he's not wrong when he gets on the radio and says, "Why am I so unlucky?" Like, the guy must have, how many ladders has that man walked under around Monaco? Because, he's having no luck at all. And it would have been great to see what Leclerc could have done. Because, maybe he'd have dived up the inside or whatever. Or at least had a go on those soft tyres. We didn't even get to see it.
No, we did not. Perhaps he takes the lead and then Lando still has that amazing start and he gets up to P3 and all of a sudden it's Leclerc, Verstappen, Norris and they're all fighting around and who knows? That is the main thing here, is that no one will ever know because it never happened. Question, Marco Rimoldi18. How does what happened on the formation lap affect the monthly cost of Matt's therapy? Now, for those of you that listen on audio, you might have thought it was just a coincidence. Oh no, better help. Do you really think that I'm a Ferrari fan? I've got to get rid of my really quite hurtful thoughts about Charles Leclerc and his current form at Ferrari. That these things they're all long-term plans, but no, realistically, it doesn't affect my monthly cost of therapy. What it does cost me is, it helps me with my delirium, in the sense of, like, there's always a part of you that goes, but Matt, you're just coping, you're just delirious. And each time something bad happens, the sort of sane side of me will start to override. So eventually I'll never get excited about any Ferrari performance ever again. And perhaps that's the best way to protect myself moving forward.
Although when Charles gets pole position at Las Vegas, you'll be jumping for joy, no matter what.
Who knows, Tommy? We'll have to wait and see what happens.
I mean, goodness me. Little plug for our live shows, but if anyone listened to the first live show, we did a very short section that was actually surprisingly long, to say that our first ever live show was in April, and we did a little compilation video of Matt's Ferrari pain. Not sure if the runtime is long enough to play all the clips from this season now, because there's certainly a lot of them. But
yeah, I mean, and this particular clip was I didn't actually really say anything in the clip. It was more just you laughing at me and not really quite believing what happened.
I couldn't believe
I just
it.
love your instant reaction is laughing when you see Charles Leclerc in some kind of DNF.
Because I just know that you're just going to be, your eyes just light up. You get the
Your reaction is brilliant.
Yeah, I'm just like, it's mainly as well because our Twitch chat goes absolutely nuts. And we had about 6,000 people at the start of the race, or 8,000 or something, and it got up to 21,000 live people watching, which shows, was it 23? Yeah. Which shows that an additional 10, 15,000 people are like,
all thought,
oh, I need to go and see what Matt's up to right now. That was their instant reaction to that.
And if you see that on paper, you go, oh, isn't that lovely? They're all checking in on Matt to see if he's doing okay. Oh, no. No. They want me, and I know there's probably a lot of you that are listening to this podcast right now, and you are one of them, that, you just like to watch the race. You don't tune into our watch-alongs, but you might do when something big happens. And you want to see me crying, me emotionally in turmoil. And then you're all like, ha, 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 Matt, ha, 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 didn't even make the first corner, ha, ha, ha. And then, whatever, it's fine. And I just told you all to F off. So, who's the real winner? Right, let's move on now because there's nothing. I mean, how do you reflect any more on Charles Leclerc's race when it was half a formation lap? You don't really. Let's in fact reflect on another team that we have slightly touched upon. Mega versus Primus asks, what on earth happened to Mercedes? They went from a 1-2 last year to a P8 DNF. I think they just got everything really wrong this weekend. Perhaps it was just the one practice session, because of course that's when Parc Fermé is locked in after that, and teams are very much forced into basically trying to learn everything in a 1 hour session. But everybody's got the same problem ahead of them. So it's not like it's just for Mercedes, but they whacked on a whole load of downforce. I'll tell you that for free. Like we saw that in qualifying. They were both a 1/10.5 up on Norris going through the middle sector of the final Q3 lap, only to end up 4/10 slower. That in itself just tells you everything you need to know about how slow that Mercedes was in a straight line. We had Alpine, the wheelbarrow, in a straight line going past them, although I will say in FP1 they did have the fastest speed in the speed trap, but I feel like they may have dialed that back slightly for the actual race because it didn't seem to be the fastest, but don't quote me on that. But my God, they just got it wrong. I think the setup of the car was completely wrong. I don't think that Mercedes is inherently bad. We've seen it be very, very good in the last few races. But every direction they took in that 1 hour practice session to then lock in their setup was wrong.
It sure was. I mean, it's absolutely insane to me. And it's maybe unfair to go too in on them because they still are second in the championship. I think that's more the fact that a lot of teams have maybe flip-flopped more. It is a close fight between other teams, and it's helped that they've got two brilliant drivers. But if you were a new Formula One fan and didn't know anything about the sport and you watched that race, you would be very surprised to hear that was the team that had dominated Formula One and looked unbeatable for years and years and years, to the point where you'd go into races and go, well, it's a foregone conclusion. No one will stop Mercedes. They're the best. They're going to win everything. There's no point watching. Like, they're so far clear. And it was everything. The car set was bad. The straight line speed was embarrassing. The tyre wear was abysmal. Even to the point where it was quite clear that Russell was quicker and they should have just let him go and see what he could have done, and Hamilton was holding him up. And they did a Ferrari, we are checking. I can't remember what the exact phrase was. We are discussing. And then even like the pit stops are just a bit mediocre. It's like, how is this the team that was so bulletproof and incredible? And I think you saw the kind of anguish in Toto's face, really, that I can't believe it's, 2 years into the regulations and they look, Hamilton has finished 1 minute behind Verstappen. And you thought, After Imola, when Hamilton got lapped by Verstappen, you were kind of like, oh, well, Mercedes, they've got things wrong. They need to, next year they'll come back and be better. They came back, the side pod thing still wasn't right. They've changed their philosophy. Still nowhere, and it's even more embarrassing that customer teams, McLaren, Aston Martin, are ahead of them.
That's the big thing. That is the big thing. It's like they have to be finishing ahead of customer teams.
Oh, 100%.
Given an engine, and you're like, we'll go figure it out. They're the ones that build it. They know everything. They know the ins and the outs, every millimeter. So
I know McLaren and Aston Martin are more established teams than this, but we banter with Ferrari, but if they were getting beaten by Haas and Alfa Romeo, like, that's absolutely shocking. And that is, in theory, kind of what Mercedes are getting done by. They're supplying engines and then getting beaten by them. That should not happen. And I think I got to say that since they, were winning the championship and in this new era, I think that weekend has got to go down as like the lowest of the low for Mercedes, of just how poorly their weekend was. Can't have really got any worse.
Yeah, it was a weekend to really forget, I think, for Mercedes. The sprint was dreadful. And you think, the race will be better because they won't be forced to go on 24-lap old softs and this, that, and the other. And then for Hamilton's final stop, he had to do 25 laps on the soft tyres. And you're just like, okay, so maybe they do have to do exactly what they saw in the sprint. And they didn't have pace on the mediums. Hamilton said after his final pit stop, he wished he'd gone on the hards rather than a scrubbed set of softs. And it just seems very disjointed, because everything we've heard about the hard tyres that weekend in particular was the only thing they're good for, I think Martin Brundle said, was to prop the wheel rims off the floor. So it's I don't know. It just
Hamilton
seemed like
was
a
maybe
weekend
just desperate at that point.
Probably desperate to do something different. But I think, with hard tyres, it could have been even worse. So yeah, definitely something to forget, especially considering it was a 1-2 last year. And we say about this customer engines team, you go, maybe they're beating them, but Lando Norris finished 8 seconds behind Max Verstappen. There is potential. It's to do with the actual car and how they're building it, rather than the engine, which of course is something that has been so important for so many years in Formula One.
One thing before you move on, actually, and I'm very sorry to the person, you'll know who your question was. I thought I put this in the sheet, but I thought it was an interesting point that someone made on Twitter. I'll try and find it to shout you out during this. But someone asked, actually, that should Mercedes have maybe even thought about starting from the pit lane because their setup was so wrong? And it's maybe in hindsight that you look at it now and think that it may be a bit silly to do that. But when you look at the fact that, say, like a Yuki Tsunoda started right at the back and has got points and only finished a few seconds behind Hamilton, you do wonder if Mercedes maybe should have just started from the pits, completely reset the car, and then just hope for the best, because based on how the sprint went, it went very similar, and they just had absolutely no pace and had to essentially drive a 71-lap race with a car that was just completely wrong because of Parc Fermé rules.
Yeah, I think I would say for that particular comment, it's very much with benefit of hindsight.
Yeah.
Track conditions can change. Cars can come alive for reasons that even F1 teams sometimes don't understand. So, can you imagine if we'd said, Hamilton and Russell have given up wherever they started on the grid? Was it 5th and 6th? Oh,
yeah,
no,
yeah.
Started 6th. Hamilton started 6th, didn't he?
Hamilton was 5th and George had a penalty. And was
that was it. George had a penalty.
7th, I think.
But yeah, can you imagine, that they gave up those positions? We'd be sat here going, why would you do that? Like, is that what a stupid thing? And perhaps as well that Mercedes maybe didn't have an answer. Now, maybe Mercedes would have again been throwing sort of caution to the wind and gone, okay, well, we're going to change the car to this, but we don't know if that's going to be any better, because again, they only had 1 hour of practice. So I think it's easier probably said than done when it comes to that one. Next question, Margaridaps18. Do you think Lando should have stayed out in the last 10 laps and tried the two-stop strategy? Okay, Max was gaining quite a lot per lap, but considering how far third place was behind them, Did he have anything to lose by trying? Worst case scenario, he would finish P2 like he did anyway. I understand why McLaren did what they did. They stayed out for a couple more laps, didn't they? They allowed Lando to lead the race. Max Verstappen starts closing in 2-3 seconds a lap easily on Lando. And I think from a fan's perspective, obviously we're praying, Lando, just stay out. You never know what could happen. You could get a safety car. But even if the safety car had been thrown after Lando, made the decision to come into the pits, he still wouldn't have had a free pit stop to then be ahead of Max Verstappen. So what McLaren have done is, okay, well, let's see if we get a free-ish pit stop in these next couple of laps. No, we didn't. We're now going into the territory of, do we take these medium tyres another 10 laps into a bit of an unknown? We don't know that we could get a puncture. There could be a massive drop-off with Lando's tyres. Does he then come under pressure from Alonso and Perez on a much more conventional strategy? So I can see where all the team are just constantly thinking about all these scenarios, and it was a roll of the dice. There was no way Lando was going to beat Max Verstappen, especially after the fact he wouldn't have got a free pit stop and stayed ahead of Max. So I get it. I totally get why they would have, why they pit Lando when they did, and I'm not even angry about it.
No, I mean, I'm glad they tried to do something a little bit different, like leave him out just long enough to see a kind of, maybe this could work. But as soon as Max goes two and a bit seconds quicker, it's like, well, yeah, it's not going to happen. And then, of course, now we know with the Alonso and Perez battle, that risk, if they had dropped behind Alonso proved in that race that he's not an easy man to pass. And even though Lando finished 30 seconds clear, he might not have easily just flown by Fernando. I think he may have got past him, but say he's stuck, if he's stuck behind Perez and Alonso, and the DRS isn't powerful enough, or he can't get by, then they look really stupid, and they've just thrown away a second place just for we might beat Max if something crazy happens. But it's tough because as fans want to see Max get challenged, and it's almost like a less extreme version of Mercedes when we wanted Hamilton to stay out in Austin and things like that we're kind of like, oh my god, please just try anything to do it. But then you get into the territory of teams just throwing away really good results in the hope that they can beat Max Verstappen, which is very, very difficult. And actually looking back on this race, because there's not a question of it, so I might as well mention it now, is it almost, because the middle of the race was actually quite dull, I've almost forgotten until I watched the highlights that Norris did actually catch Max at one point and have a very good chance to pass him. And it didn't quite happen. And then it was literally only that one time. But what might have been, we were like, oh my God, Lando's actually battling him for the lead. This is insane.
Then I tweeted, and then it was 1.7 seconds the gap. So I want to apologise. Sorry, I got excited. I think everybody got kind of baited. I think even Max, he's toying with all of us. He's like, all right, I'll let Lando get a bit close. We'll give the TV, just a little bit of action, 4 corners to be precise, and then bye. 2.3, 2.7. We'll keep the gap there, and then we'll just constantly extend it. It was a bit of a strange moment to see Max Verstappen actually throwing a defensive shape to any other car. I was like, oh wow, Max defending. This is new. Has he forgotten how to defend?
Yeah, exactly. But no, it was good to watch, but sadly it didn't continue for more than 2 corners.
Yes, exactly. Sad times. Next question, 0x Fusions. Why were Daniel and Oscar not allowed to unlap themselves before the restart? In the past, we have seen cars be let out before the others complete a lap and then join the back of the formation lap and be back on the lead lap. You got any insight into this, Tommy? Have you got any extra insight?
No, if we find out, we'll maybe mention it more in the driver ratings. I had a listen to Daniel Ricciardo's interview, and he just said it was annoying because that they found out that they were a lap down. And it was strange because obviously they had the issues. They came into the pits, then there was the red flag. And you can, if you watch the start again, you can see that Daniel and Oscar drive down the pit lane. They come in and pit on the first lap. And then, they're already a lap behind. So it's weird that they didn't essentially start at the front from the formation lap and then could unlap themselves.
There must have been some
timing
boring procedure, which
they couldn't do it.
You think in 2023 they can't just click a lap on the timing system or something like that. But yeah, it was really frustrating for sure, because you think when you're behind a safety car, the lap cars are allowed to go through.
It's so early in the race as well that you've essentially lost a whole lap on lap one.
It's actually mad, especially when you've had a formation lap to go to the grid. Like, why? I don't know. Maybe it's because they don't want to do any more running than that. I guess it's not behind a safety car, so they wouldn't do any more than one lap. So how would they then unlap themselves if they're going straight to the grid? Yeah. I don't know. I feel like there is definitely a solution that could be done for this, and this is like one of those archaic Formula One rules that's just been there forever. And they're like, well, this is how it works. Because
of timing and because of procedures, and it's all on an electronic system where they have to go through certain sectors rather than them just going on a bit of code and typing delete one lap. do you know what I mean?
Tommy. Come on. You got some code in your locker, have you?
Yeah, hacks. You get the odd HTML coding. But no, it's a shame for Daniel and Oscar, because you look at the rate of attrition as well. Like, very rare to see only 14 cars finishing, and obviously 2 of them were just game over from the start because they were a lap down. And Ricciardo had very good pace. Piastri again wasn't that far behind Ricciardo as well. I don't think Piastri's pace was to write home about, but I think the 2 of them would definitely have scored points if they'd have been allowed to race. Well, maybe not definitely, but I think they'd have slotted in behind Tsunoda. And yeah, we could have seen a double AlphaTauri points again, and they'd have had an unbelievable weekend after what looked like a very floppy start.
Yeah, it's really hard to kind of measure Ricciardo and Piastri. Of course, Ricciardo beat Piastri in the end, but Oscar was absolutely and fairly being used as a bit of a guinea pig for Lando Norris, sort of telling the team how the medium tyres are feeling and this, that and the other. And I think that's why Lando stayed out for so long on the softs.
And they couldn't fix his car as well, because I know everyone will be shouting that his car wasn't 100% fixed, Piastri's either.
Exactly. So it's hard to really measure on that one. But they did a great job, both for Daniel Ricciardo's car and for Oscar Piastri's car, to even get them into the race. Although I think they probably both were wishing they'd just kind of like had been able to just have a chill rather than be a lap down for the whole race and just do a test session, basically. But I'm sure Piastri's feedback helped Lando in the long run. Not that it would have really changed his result, because he was 26 seconds clear of Alonso. But a shame for both of them, because it would have been nice to have seen where they would have ended up. Gene Sullivan, 27, asks a question. Who was a bigger disappointment, the TV directors or Charles Leclerc's car? What are these questions? Did you pick that one on purpose, Tommy? Are you Gene Sullivan, 27? Is that your burner account? You just like seeing me hurt, don't you? For me, I mean, quite obvious that I would probably pick Charles Leclerc here, but a very close second was the TV direction. It was one of the poorest races I've seen in terms of the direction that was happening via the international feed, and how they were basically cutting away from the most... Well, there wasn't that many important parts in this race, but the important parts that we were having, we could only see via the split time on the left of our screen, because we had, was it Perez and Alonso fighting out the pits? We're like, oh, where's Perez going to come out? Where's Perez going to come out in the grand scheme? Oh, we're looking at Hamilton getting passed by an Alpine or whatever it was. And it happened again. There was 2 separate occasions where the pit lane, we were focusing on the pit lane. I think one of the times it wasn't actually that close. It was like 3.5 seconds. But there's one time Sorry, one time, okay, you're like, fine, you've made a mistake. Twice, what are you doing? Do you have any wheel knowledge whatsoever? The person that is making those decisions, it's bewildering, and it was so infuriating. Not just that, but the battle for the lead, which lasted a very small amount of time. But the second I see Lando Norris under a second behind Max Verstappen, show me it. Whether it's a small box or a big box, one of them, show me it. That is what we're here for, not for your stupid replays.
Oh, the replays was freaking me off a lot. Like,
wow.
Yeah, it was actually infuriating. This is something that I've ranted about for ages. And I think, we had races in 2022 where I said the same thing, where when you get tracks like Brazil, where, and we saw this with Fernando and Perez and stuff, that the other person gets DRS back. Just because the move has been completed, don't cut to the replay the second. Like, I want to see a bit of live action. I want to absorb the overtake. I want to see if the other person can get back, even if it's not in an overtaking zone. I want to see two cars close together going through the infield section. I don't care that they probably won't be able to pass there. I want to see live battling. We don't need to see the replays. There was enough of that race where not a lot was happening that they could have shown their 50,000 replays that they need to do. It's too quick. They're too trigger happy with the replays that they feel like they have to show it. And I don't know about you, but when I see a brilliant overtake, I want to kind of absorb it. I don't need to be like, oh,
what just happened?
What just happened? I need to see that again.
I've forgotten.
Yeah, I've forgotten. And if it's a case where like people are like on their phones and miss it, then that's their problem. But it's true.
Exactly.
Like, you wind it back if you've got that luxury, or like they'll show the replays later.
Luxury of winding back.
But it's true. Like,
VHS out.
Exactly. It just annoys me.
Very good point.
It annoys me. And also, I can't believe this happened. The only time I felt like we saw the mini box, the whole race was for a Lance Stroll pit stop.
It was.
Why?
It was.
Why now? Why now? It's like they went, we're just going to remind you that the mini box exists, but we're not going to show anything interesting in it.
They're basically baiting us.
Yeah.
They're like, we could use this box. Here's Lance Stroll. I reckon they've memed us. I reckon
it is literally.
We're getting criticised here. And let's not forget, the biggest criticism they've ever got is the Lance Stroll replay at Monaco. So they've gone, let's stick a Lance Stroll pit stop up on the small box, shall we?
Even though it's not the case, it literally felt like they watched our rant yesterday and they were just trolling us the whole time. Like, let's do the mini box, but for a relevant thing, this will piss them off. Go on.
Yeah, I dare you to go even harder on us, guys. Come on. Wow, that was a squeak. I don't know if that was your chair or your
it was my chair,
voice.
Yeah.
No, I think that was your voice. It was like a anyway. Yes, the TV direction was really, really disappointing. I think it hits harder when the races are not great. Brazil, unfortunately, didn't deliver to the level of which we wanted it to, and were praying for it to be. And perhaps the level of expectation was so far through the roof, and perhaps it's due to my Brazilian wig that I was wearing that maybe I caused some problems for the Sunday race, but. It makes it even more frustrating when something's going on. And I know that Sky Sports don't manage the TV direction, but their whole messaging is like, Sky Sports, it's only live once.
It's only live once, and then it's not their
Formula
fault.
One, it's live 0 times, but we have 4 replays for you. Here you go.
Yeah, it's only live not once, but you'll get to see it again 6 times from every angle, and then miss the next bit of action because we're showing replays.
And then we'll see a replay of that action that you've just missed. But that's obviously not Sky that does that sort of stuff. But anyway, let's move on. Biggest winner, driver or team? Ooh, well, I know who you're going for.
Aston Martin.
Team's very fair as well. Yeah, I think Aston Martin. I mean, in fact, Stroll finished 6 seconds behind Alonso. I know Alonso was pulling a lot of defensive manoeuvres, which would have lost him a bit of time, but still, Lance Stroll was chefing as well. So fair play. Aston Martin. Yeah, I'm going to lock in biggest winner for that. And are you going to go for Aston Martin or Fernando Alonso in particular, just so you can talk about him a little bit more?
I mean, to be fair, I'd almost say Yuki Tsunoda, the fact that if we're talking about the whole weekend, the fact that he got double points, which is a minor miracle for AlphaTauri when they've not scored many points. And it is absolutely insane that we went so much of the season with only a few races left where AlphaTauri barely scored any points and were so far clearly last in the title. They're now 7 points off Williams and could end up P7. And that doesn't feel like it's absolutely outrageous for them to do now.
No, and I mean, they're only 87 behind Alpine, so a really good couple of last races, and they could get sick as well. But no, that is the
triple points finale in Abu Dhabi.
Yeah. I mean, can you imagine that? They're looking at the Verstappen to Perez gap, and oh god, we're gonna have to give out 10 times points in order for Perez to even have a shot here, which is crazy to say out loud.
Which is still almost not enough. No, it isn't enough. That is actually mad.
11 times.
So you could do 10 times the point for the finale, and Perez still wouldn't win if he won and Max DNF'd.
Oh my goodness.
That is actually bonkers, isn't it?
That is depressing. If you like competitive sport all the way to the last race. Biggest loser, driver or team?
Mercedes.
Mercedes is very much up there. Alfa Romeo is also up there. Both of their cars out, and what we've just spoken about as well. They were in a fight with AlphaTauri, but they're losing ground on them now. They're now 5 points behind AlphaTauri with a couple of races to go. So I would say probably Alfa Romeo are losing more by the fact that they are losing touch with P8 in the constructors. It's a lot of money for these kind of teams. Haas with a miracle performance, could they overthrow them? 4 points behind with a couple of races to go as well. I'm going to lock in Alfa Romeo.
Fair. I will just go for Mercedes. Just maybe it's almost like it's not that disastrous, but it is for Mercedes standards, and the fact that there was so much hype. And I guess it does put maybe some pressure on them, put pressure with Ferrari going into those last two races when Leclerc was in the barrier. They should have quite easily, come away from that race with a lot more points than Ferrari, and they ended up losing ground to them. So
yeah, that was crazy to think that how quickly Sainz got on the back of the pair of them, got past them, and then of course Russell having that DNF meant that Sainz scored a P6 and Hamilton a P8. So it could be interesting if Ferrari come out the blocks firing in Vegas as to who gets P2 in the constructors. It's a lot of money. Right, let's now look back at our predictions, shall we, that we made on Wednesday. Good. Let's start with biggest. Let's start with biggest good surprise then. I went for Charles Leclerc. Do I regret it? Yes. Every fibre of my being regrets putting Charles Leclerc into my basket as the only driver that I was going to pick X-wise into my basket. And I've paid the price.
You have. My biggest good surprise was Fernando Alonso. And boy, was that probably the only good prediction I've made this season.
Was he really that good? Was he really good? That good? I mean,
was he really good getting a podium?
No,
that was. I mean, even I said biggest good surprise, thinking I was like, I might get a P5 or 6, and I think that would be a worthy surprise. Podium,
fight it.
Podium was wild. So yeah,
very wild. So well done. 1 point for you. How many points were you behind, Tommy, going into this? Can we remind the audience, please?
2.
Good. Oh, well, that's fantastic. Biggest flop. I was in dreamland after Friday, not because I wanted to see AlphaTauri do badly, but because I thought I'd been on to an absolute worldie. And then they scored double points, which I don't think they've done the entire... And double points, obviously, with Yuki Tsunoda both times. Don't think they've done that the entire year. So, well done.
You normally nail these. I think the universe got confused and thought you said, I got it the wrong way around because Charles Leclerc has literally gone off on the formation lap, so would have been probably the biggest flop. And AlphaTauri are arguably one of the biggest good surprises of the whole weekend. So I think the universe has been confused. What
you're telling me right now is half a point.
Is minus point. No. Biggest flop, I went for Red Bull, which, no, Max Verstappen is too strong. Why did I even attempt it?
You tried. You tried, my friend. You tried. Pole position, I went for Charles Leclerc. No.
I went for Lando Norris, and that was actually a really good prediction, and it was just like, no,
wrong one.
He's going to, wrong one again. That's happened twice
now. To be fair,
now.
you got it the wrong way round as well for pole and sprint shootout.
Yeah.
So sprint shootout, I went for Charles Leclerc. No. Good.
And
you went for Verstappen.
I went for Verstappen.
0. Sprint winner, I went for Charles Leclerc.
Oh, God.
And you went for Verstappen, you boring... I'm joking. Well done. Congratulations. So now we are level on points right now.
Oh, my word. Oh, we are messing this up. Good.
Right. My top 3, or our top 3, because we go through both of them. Third place, I went for Charles Leclerc. I went for Charles Leclerc. Good. You went for?
Carlos Sainz. Also, not very good.
In second place, I went for Lewis Hamilton. No.
Second place, Lando Norris. Yes.
Tommy leads. Tommy is
taken
1
the
point
lead.
ahead. What a move. Oh, but look at this. Fernando Alonso's coming back on the last lap because I went for first place Max Verstappen. And he's levelled the points again. What's Tommy gone for?
Lewis Hamilton.
Hey! And hold on. There's another final one crazy prediction. Gallagher out of nowhere. The sprint will be better than the main race. Oh, what a move. We're back to 1 point ahead. Definitely, right?
Yeah, it's fair. It was.
I've nailed that. And I didn't want to nail it. I'm sorry.
No. How could you?
And what did you do? Can you level it?
No. Red Bull won't win. What was I thinking?
Well, you hedged your bets.
Fair,
well done.
We're within a point now. But we are cooking
point.
with this thing. Like
1 point with 2 races to go. Ooh, baby.
The funniest thing is we haven't actually. That's wild that it is actually this close. I know we banter that we're kind of like Michael Massing it, but we do predict what we think is going to happen. We don't talk about our
predictions.
No.
The first time we talk about our predictions is in the show because we want it to be a bit of a surprise, and that's amazing. It just shows that we are equal on wheel knowledge / delirium. And finally, the 3 crazy predictions from you wonderful people. Hector 4 smash, Checo podium. You are half a tenth away from getting that right. King Leon juiced. There won't be any VSCs or safety cars. That's incorrect. There was a safety car at the start. And Jones RF873 double Haas points. No, that did not happen. And that is it. Thank you, everybody, for watching and listening to this P1 podcast for the Brazilian Grand Prix. Thank you for joining us over on Twitch over the course of the weekend. It was lots of fun. We're flying out to America on Saturday, so we won't be here for the Twitch watch-alongs for Vegas, but we'll be doing all of our normal content, as you know and love from us, and we'll be bringing you all of that and some extra stuff as well whilst we're out in America, which is going to be very, very exciting. What are your final thoughts, Tom Bellingham?
My final thoughts are make sure you grab those P1 live show tickets. Don't and ah because they're selling quick, and we all need to see the 6-hour Charles Leclerc compilation live.
Mate, the one we did in April, obviously that was quite a short clip, but it was such a weird thing because obviously we do Twitch watch-alongs and we do podcasts and stuff, but we never have that sort of audience feedback, that immediate audience feedback. And to have people literally bellow laughing in the show and stuff, and you were dropping, even not in the Charles Leclerc stuff, but you'd just be saying the odd thing in the Tom Bellingham kind of way, and people were like, love a bit of Tommy. I know, it was mega, but it was such a cool experience, and we've gone bigger and better this year. So if you want to come to the P1 London live show or the Manchester live show, the Glasgow one has finished now in terms of sales. So sold out. That's the term. I'll get there eventually. Then please do come along. We'd love to have you there. And that is it. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you very soon for driver ratings tomorrow and lots of other content that you know that we do. Bye.
Bye.